In the vast paranormal phenomena, there is a presence so elusive yet so persistent that it has haunted the collective consciousness of humanity for centuries. Not bound by culture or geography, this entity has been reported across continents and throughout history. From the dense forests of North America to the remote highlands of Scotland, from ancient tribal legends to modern urban encounters, it is known by many names, but perhaps most aptly as the thing that walks behind. The sensation begins innocuously enough, a prickling at the nape of your neck, a sudden chill despite warm surroundings, an inexplicable certainty that you are being watched. Then comes the footsteps. Always behind you, perfectly matching your pace. When you stop, they stop. When you turn to look, nothing is there. Yet the moment you resume your path, so too does your unseen companion. Those who have experienced this phenomenon describe it as more than just a feeling. It has weight, presence, intention. While most encounters end with nothing more than frayed nerves and a quickened pace toward home, other cases suggest something far more sinister. Missing persons whose last known words mentioned feeling followed. Strange deaths with no apparent cause. Hunting parties who return with one fewer member than they departed with, the missing always the last in line, the one walking with something behind them. What makes this phenomenon particularly disturbing is its consistent pattern across vastly different cultures and times. The Ojibwe people speak of a malevolent spirit they call the Wendigo, which stalks travelers through northern forests. In Scotland's misty highlands, tales persist of a presence that follows solitary hikers across desolate moorlands. Australian Aboriginal traditions warn of the Namarodor, a shadowy entity that tracks its victims before striking. Yet despite centuries of accounts, the entity remains largely undocumented by modern standards. There are no photographs, no video evidence, only personal testimonies and the eerie consistency with which they match across time and space. This absence of concrete evidence has led many to dismiss the phenomenon as nothing more than an evolutionary response, the instinct that kept our ancestors alert to predators now misfiring in a world where such threats are largely gone. But those who have felt it know differently. They insist that whatever walks behind them is neither imagination nor animal. It has purpose, it has patience, and most disturbing of all, it knows your name. The earliest documented accounts of this stalking presence come from Native American oral traditions. The Navajo speak of a being they call the Skinwalker, a witch who has attained the power to transform into various animals. These entities are said to follow travelers at night, mimicking their movements and the sounds of their footsteps. One particularly chilling Navajo account dates back to the early 20th century. A medicine man traveling alone between settlements reported being followed for 3 consecutive nights. Each night, the footsteps grew closer despite his increasing pace. On the 3rd night, he claimed to hear his own voice calling from behind him, begging him to stop and wait. Only by reaching the safety of his destination before turning around did he escape what he believed was certain death. The pine barrens of New Jersey hold similar tales. This million-acre forest has long been considered a hotspot for paranormal activity, from the legendary Jersey Devil to mysterious lights in the sky. But perhaps most disturbing are the accounts of hikers and campers who report being stalked by an unseen presence. In 1993, Ranger John Irwin was patrolling near the Mullica River when he encountered what he described as a tall, fur-covered creature standing on 2 legs. Despite firing multiple shots at the entity, it showed no signs of injury. The ranger and his son followed the creature's tracks only to find them abruptly ending in open mud, as if the being had simply vanished. Similar reports emerged in 2003 when a group of college graduates camping in the Pine Barrens encountered what they described as a gaunt creature coated in black fur that seemed to track them through the Droshan Seas forest. What began as an innocent camping trip turned into a desperate flight through the woods, with the entity seemingly anticipating their movements at every turn. The phenomenon extends well beyond American shores. In the Scottish Highlands, tales of an unseen follower date back centuries. These ancient lands, carved by glaciers during prehistoric times, have long been associated with supernatural occurrences. The region's isolation and rugged landscape provide the perfect backdrop for encounters with the unexplained. Local residents speak of a presence that follows travelers through remote glens, matching their pace precisely. In one account from the 1980s, an elderly woman attending a house party in Inverness described how she had once lived in a cottage that later became haunted by her own past actions. The entity in this case seemed tied to emotional trauma, a theme that recurs in many reports of the stalking presence. Another Scottish case involves a teenager named Scott Campbell who, while cycling through woods southeast of Glasgow in the 1960s, spotted a magnificent mansion with an octagonal central tower. When he returned along the same path just an hour later, the building had vanished completely. Later investigation revealed the structure, known as Wood Castle, had been demolished in 1951. Somehow, Campbell had witnessed a building that no longer existed. While this might seem unrelated to our stalking entity, many researchers believe these time slips and the sensation of being followed may be connected phenomena, both involving tiers in what we perceive as normal reality. The thing that walks behind seems to prefer isolated locations, but urban encounters have been reported as well. In densely populated areas, the entity appears to adapt its strategy, using crowds as camouflage while maintaining its relentless pursuit. In 2010, a subway worker in Boston reported a strange incident while closing the station after the last train. As he made his final rounds, he became aware of footsteps echoing his own. Each time he stopped to listen, the sounds ceased. When he resumed walking, so did the footsteps. Thinking it might be a homeless person or someone who had missed the last train, he called out. No response came, yet the footsteps continued. Security camera footage later showed him alone in the station, despite his insistence that something had followed him from platform to exit. Such urban encounters often share a common element with their wilderness counterparts. They typically occur during liminal times and spaces, dusk and dawn, the boundary between forest and field. The last person to leave a building, the solo hiker trailing behind a group, the entity seems drawn to these in-between states, these moments of transition and vulnerability. The psychological impact of these encounters can be severe and lasting. Those who experience the phenomenon often report a profound sense of violation that lingers long after the event itself. Many describe a change in their relationship with solitude. Previously comfortable being alone, they now avoid situations where they might find themselves the last person in a location or the final member of a group. Some victims report recurring nightmares in which they finally turn to confront whatever walks behind them, only to wake at the crucial moment of revelation. Others develop a persistent sensation of being watched even in secure environments, leading to anxiety, insomnia, and in extreme cases, agoraphobia. Dr. Eleanor Hendricks, a psychologist specializing in trauma related to unexplained experiences, has worked with several individuals who claim to have been stalked by an unseen presence. What strikes me about these cases is the consistency in how they describe the experience. She notes, even patients with no knowledge of the phenomenon use remarkably similar language, the precise matching of footsteps, the absolute certainty that turning around would be dangerous. The sense that the entity is not just following, but hunting. Hendricks neither dismisses nor endorses the reality of these encounters, but acknowledges their impact. Whether this is a genuine paranormal phenomenon or a specific type of psychological experience, the fear these individuals feel is very real, and the effect on their lives can be devastating. Some encounters with the thing that walks behind have taken more sinister turns. In northern Utah, a vast swampy woodland known as the Pine Barrens covers over 1 million acres. Within this primordial landscape lies a 480-acre property that has gained notoriety as one of the most active paranormal hotspots in North America, Skinwalker Ranch. When Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased the ranch in 1994, they believed they had found their dream home. But almost immediately, strange occurrences began to plague the family. Among the many inexplicable phenomena they encountered was an unseen entity that moved through their cattle herd, causing the animals to part as if making way for some large, invisible presence. Water in the nearby canal would be displaced as if massive feet were stomping through it, yet nothing could be seen. The Shermans also reported what they called orbs, tennis ball-sized spheres of light that would zip through the trees and seem to observe the family. The blue variants, nicknamed blue meanies, instilled intense fear in anyone who approached them. In one particularly disturbing incident, Terry's 3 hunting dogs chased one of these orbs into the trees. Moments later, 3 yelps were heard, and the dogs never returned. The next morning, all that remained were 3 piles of cauterized flesh. After enduring 2 years of torment that cost them livestock, pets, and nearly their sanity, the Shermans sold the ranch to billionaire Robert Bigelow, whose scientific team would spend nearly a decade investigating the property's bizarre phenomena. While the events at Skinwalker Ranch encompass a wide range of paranormal activity beyond our stalking entity, they share a common element, the sense of being observed by something intelligent yet utterly alien. The unseen presence moving through the herd, leaving physical evidence of its passage despite being invisible, bears striking similarities to reports of the thing that walks behind. What makes this phenomenon particularly difficult to study is its resistance to modern documentation methods. In an age where nearly everyone carries a camera in their pocket, the thing that walks behind remains stubbornly unphotographed. Some researchers suggest this is evidence of its non-physical nature. Perhaps it exists partially or wholly in another dimension, becoming perceptible to human senses only under specific conditions. Others propose that the entity deliberately avoids being recorded, possessing an intelligence that understands and adapts to human technology. This would explain why formal investigations so often come up empty-handed, while individual experiences continue unabated. A particularly disturbing aspect of the phenomenon is what happens on those rare occasions when someone does turn to confront whatever walks behind them. Most reports end with the entity vanishing or the witness fleeing before any clear sighting occurs. But a few accounts describe what was seen, and these descriptions are notably consistent despite coming from witnesses separated by vast distances and cultural backgrounds. A tall, thin silhouette, disproportionately long limbs, a face either obscured by shadow or described as wrong in ways the witnesses struggle to articulate. Movement that seems fluid yet somehow wrong, as if the entity's joints function differently from human anatomy. In February 1993, Air Force Captain Gary Sudbrink experienced a series of strange events that began with the sensation of being followed. While packing for a trip in his Texas apartment, he was startled by a helicopter hovering unusually low near his property. At the airport, a slim man in an overcoat approached him, asking personal questions and noting his responses in a notebook. On the plane, another stranger sat next to Gary and began questioning him about his travel plans. Upon arriving at his parents' home in New York, Gary learned that a helicopter had been hovering over their house that same day. Later, while speaking with a friend on the phone, he discovered that someone impersonating him had called this friend just 20 minutes earlier. Then came the phone calls. An unnatural voice called the Sudbrink home repeatedly over 2 days, saying cryptic phrases like, "You're being impersonated by the other voice," and "Keep an eye in the sky near Orion tonight." The calls referenced government interference and warned of disrupted visitations. While the Sudbrink case involves multiple strange elements beyond just the stalking phenomenon, the sensation of being monitored and followed remains central to the experience. The entity seemed to track Gary across vast distances, anticipating his movements and even attempting to mimic his identity. In the Sudbrink recordings, the voice exhibits characteristics often associated with the thing that walks behind: stilted speech patterns, an unnatural cadence, and knowledge it seemingly shouldn't possess. The phrase, "you're being impersonated by the other voice," is particularly chilling in the context of entities that mimic their victims. What makes these phone calls especially disturbing is that they were recorded, providing rare documented evidence of the phenomenon. The recordings remain some of the most compelling pieces of evidence in paranormal research, defying simple explanation even decades later. The thing that walks behind has left its mark on popular culture as well. From horror films featuring stalking entities to urban legends about followers who vanish when confronted, the concept has resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. Perhaps this cultural footprint speaks to a collective experience, a shared human fear that predates modern society. One must consider the evolutionary perspective. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans were both predator and prey. The sensation of being stalked would have been a vital survival mechanism, alerting our ancestors to danger. Could the thing that walks behind simply be an echo of this evolutionary programming, a false positive in a world where large predators no longer threaten most humans? This theory fails to account for the consistent descriptions across cultures and time periods. It also doesn't explain cases where multiple witnesses report the same phenomenon simultaneously, or instances where physical evidence remains after an encounter. Modern science offers other potential explanations. Infrasound, sound waves below the threshold of human hearing, can cause feelings of unease, anxiety, and the sensation of a presence. These low-frequency vibrations occur naturally near fault lines, in certain wind conditions, and can be produced by industrial equipment. Some researchers suggest that areas with frequent reports of stalking entities may have environmental conditions conducive to infrasound. Yet, this explanation, too, falls short when considering cases where the phenomenon follows a specific individual across different environments, or when it leaves physical evidence of its passage. The field of quantum physics offers more speculative possibilities. The concept of parallel universes or alternate dimensions existing alongside our own has gained traction in theoretical physics. Could the thing that walks behind represent some form of bleed-through between dimensions, an entity that exists partially in our reality and partially elsewhere, perceivable but not fully present? Some researchers have proposed that certain individuals may be more sensitive to such phenomenon, explaining why some people experience the stalking presence, while others in the same location do not. This sensitivity might be innate or triggered by specific life events, particularly those involving trauma or near-death experiences. Dr. Raymond Moody, known for his research on near-death experiences, has noted that many people who have clinically died and been resuscitated report increased paranormal experiences afterward, including the sensation of being followed by an unseen presence. This has led to speculation that such experiences may temporarily alter a person's perceptual abilities, allowing them to sense entities or energies that remain imperceptible to others. The role of belief systems cannot be discounted when examining this phenomenon. Different cultures interpret the experience through their own spiritual and religious frameworks. What a modern urban dweller might describe as a stalking presence or malevolent entity, an indigenous person might identify as a specific type of spirit based on their cultural traditions. These varying interpretations don't invalidate the experiences. Rather, they suggest that humans across time and space have encountered something similar enough to generate consistent reports, even as the explanation varies according to cultural context. Perhaps most disturbing are accounts where the thing that walks behind seems to target specific individuals over extended periods. These cases often begin with isolated incidents, the occasional sensation of being followed, unexplained footsteps, objects moving when no one is present. Over time, the experiences escalate in frequency and intensity, suggesting an entity that is growing more familiar with its chosen target. In such cases, witnesses often report a progression from simple stalking to more direct forms of interaction. The presence begins to make itself known not just through footsteps but through touch, a cold finger tracing the back of a neck, a hand briefly resting on a shoulder when no one is present. Some report hearing their name whispered from empty rooms or feeling breath on their ear while alone. This gradual escalation has led some researchers to speculate that the thing that walks behind may be testing boundaries, learning what it can get away with before its victim reacts. Others suggest it may be feeding on fear, growing stronger as its target becomes more frightened. Most chilling are reports from individuals who claim the entity followed them from one location to another, even across continents. A woman who experienced the phenomenon while living in rural Japan later reported identical experiences after moving to Canada. A man who first encountered the presence while hiking in the Appalachians later sensed it in his urban apartment thousands of miles away. These cases suggest an entity that can either travel vast distances or exist in multiple locations simultaneously. In the Scottish Highlands, local residents tell of a woman who, upon entering a specific cottage, encountered her own past self reliving a traumatic moment. This apparent time slip, where past emotional events seem to imprint themselves on a location, shares characteristics with the thing that walks behind. Both involve a sense of presence that defies conventional understanding of time and space. The Scottish woman's experience is particularly relevant as it suggests that what walks behind us may sometimes be aspects of ourselves, traumas, regrets, or unresolved emotional states taking on a quasi-physical form. This interpretation aligns with Jung's concept of the shadow self, the disowned parts of our psyche that we refuse to acknowledge, but which follow us nonetheless. Yet this psychological interpretation fails to account for cases involving multiple witnesses or physical evidence. When three hikers simultaneously report being followed by the same entity, or when something leaves footprints in mud despite being invisible, we must consider explanations beyond individual psychology. The phenomenon extends to water as well. Sailors have long reported a presence that seems to follow their vessels, particularly in remote locations. These maritime accounts often describe a wake in the water as if something large is swimming just below the surface, matching the ship's speed precisely. When the ship changes course, so does the unseen follower. One detailed account comes from a naval officer stationed in the North Atlantic during the 1970s. During a particularly isolated patrol, crew members began reporting footsteps on the deck when no one was present. These footsteps would follow individuals as they moved about the ship, stopping when they stopped, resuming when they continued. After several weeks, multiple crew members reported seeing a dark figure standing at the periphery of their vision, always just out of direct sight. The captain ordered a thorough search of the vessel, suspecting a stowaway, but no one was found. The experiences continued until the ship returned to port, at which point they ceased entirely. When the same crew departed on another mission months later, the phenomenon did not recur, suggesting it was somehow tied to that specific location in the North Atlantic. Water features prominently in many accounts of the thing that walks behind. Rivers, lakes, and coastlines seem to attract the phenomenon, perhaps because they represent boundaries between different states, land and water, solid and liquid. These liminal spaces, these transitions between one state and another, consistently appear in reports across cultures. In Utah's Skinwalker Ranch, strange creatures were observed crossing the property, from humanoids resembling Bigfoot to bizarre canine-hyena hybrids. But perhaps most disturbing was the invisible entity that moved through cattle herds and displaced water in the canal. This unseen presence shares striking similarities with the thing that walks behind, felt rather than seen, leaving physical evidence of its passage despite being invisible to the human eye. The ranch also featured portal-like anomalies in the sky, described by one witness as gateways to another place. Could these serve as entry points for entities like the thing that walks behind? If so, this might explain how the phenomenon appears in such diverse locations worldwide. Perhaps these portals, these weak points between dimensions, exist globally. Some researchers speculate that certain geological features may facilitate such dimensional crossovers. Areas with high concentrations of quartz, unusual electromagnetic fields, or specific geometric arrangements of natural features seem to report higher instances of paranormal activity, including stalking entities. This theory would explain why certain locations become hotspots for encounters, while similar environments nearby remain free of such phenomena. It also aligns with indigenous beliefs that certain places serve as doorways for spiritual entities to enter our world. The Pine Barrens of New Jersey, with its million acres of dense forest, has long been considered such a doorway. Local legends speak of the Jersey Devil, a winged bipedal creature with cloven hooves and glowing eyes that has terrorized the region since the 18th century. While distinct from the thing that walks behind, both entities share a territorial aspect. They seem bound to specific regions where the boundary between worlds may be thinner. The connection between these various phenomena remains unclear. Are they distinct entities that happen to inhabit the same liminal spaces, different manifestations of the same force? Or perhaps different human interpretations of encounters with something that exists beyond our full comprehension? What seems certain is that the thing that walks behind represents one of the most persistent and widespread paranormal phenomena in human experience. Its consistency across time and culture suggests something beyond mere imagination or psychological projection. Whether entity, energy, or something yet undefined, it continues to stalk the boundaries of human understanding, always present, always just behind us, never quite seen, but impossible to ignore. For those who have felt its presence, the experience remains vivid years, or even decades later. They describe not just fear, but a profound sense of wrongness, the certainty that whatever follows them should not exist in our reality. This existential dread, this challenge to our understanding of what is possible, may explain why the phenomenon has such lasting impact on its witnesses. As our world grows increasingly documented and connected, one might expect reports of the thing that walks behind to diminish. Yet they persist, adapting to modern environments and technologies while maintaining their essential character. The entity that once stalked solitary travelers on moonlit paths now follows late-night workers through empty office buildings and subway stations, its methodology unchanged despite the radically different settings. This adaptability suggests an intelligence, something capable of learning and evolving its approach while remaining true to its fundamental nature. It walks behind us still, its footsteps echoing our own, patient and persistent, waiting for us to make that fatal mistake, to stop, to turn, to look directly at what should never be seen. In the modern age of satellite mapping and ubiquitous surveillance, few truly unexplored places remain on our planet. Yet, the thing that walks behind reminds us that some frontiers still exist, not in distant geography, but in the spaces between what we know and what we sense, between the world as we understand it and the world as it truly is. It follows us across that boundary, neither fully there nor fully elsewhere, a constant companion on the edge of perception. The next time you walk alone and feel that familiar prickling at the nape of your neck, the next time you hear footsteps matching your own when no one else is present, remember the countless others throughout history who have experienced the same. The thing that walks behind has many names across many cultures, but its presence remains constant, patient, persistent, and always just beyond the range of vision, waiting for you to turn around. For some, perhaps, that moment of turning will bring nothing but empty air and self-deprecating relief. For others, it may reveal something our minds are not equipped to process, a glimpse of what exists in the spaces between established reality. The question each person must answer for themselves is whether that knowledge is worth the cost of turning to face what walks behind.